This is the legendary Olympus 15mm f2 macro lens. I've had this lens since the old Olympus Four Thirds DSLR days. It is super sharp, it renders beautiful bokeh, and it is known to be a fantastic portrait lens. However, how does this old lens perform on newer camera bodies like this or M1? That's what we want to find out in this video. Let's do this! This Olympus 15mm f2 macro lens was launched in the year 2003. And technically, this is a macro lens. But it is also popular for portrait photography because of its medium telephoto reach and bright aperture f2. Being an old lens designed for DSLRs, this Olympus 15mm f2, the autofocus performance is not great. In fact, this is one of the slowest autofocusing lenses for the Four Thirds DSLR lenses from Olympus. And a lot of people still love this lens despite its poor autofocus performance because of its exceptional image quality. I've had this lens for a while since the DSLR days, but I've never tested it on my newer mirrorless macro Four Thirds camera bodies like this OM system or M1. So I want to see how this lens performs, especially for shooting portraits. And before we talk about the performance of this combination, let's take a look at some sample photographs first. An important note on using the older Four Thirds DSLR lenses on newer mirrorless macro Four Thirds camera bodies. Bear in mind, you cannot mount these older lenses on the mirrorless camera bodies directly. You do need to use an adapter. There are several adapters available. Find an appropriate one. Let's start with the most important thing I want to talk about, the autofocus performance. Knowing that this Olympus 15mm f2 macro lens is an old DSLR lens, using it on the newer camera bodies like this mirrorless macro Four Thirds or M1, there tend to be some compromises when it comes to autofocus. But I'm very happy to report that the autofocus performance is actually perfectly functional. I'm using the human face and eye tracking feature with the continuous autofocus on this OM system OM1 camera, and I find that it manages to stick on the human portrait, the human face and eye, quite effectively, following the movement around the frame. I get quite high keeper rate. The hit rate was about 60 to 70%. Don't get me wrong, it is not 100% reliable. I still get some misses there and here. This combination, it can fail at times, but to be able to get 60 to 70% hit rate, that is quite commendable because, hey, this is an old lens. I'm sure OM system did not design this camera to be optimized for such an old lens, which is already discontinued, right? So to be able to get such a high keep rate, I'm actually very impressed, and I'm very happy to see that, hey, you know what? This old lens, you can actually breathe some new life into it. When it comes to lens optical quality and image rendering, there is no doubt this legendary Olympus Zuiko Digital 50 f2, this lens truly shines. In terms of sharpness, this lens is really sharp. Even shooting at wide open f2 aperture, this lens can produce excellent sharpness, full of fine details, really good contrast. It is like a pro-grade lens here. And when it comes to bokeh rendering, man oh man, the bokeh area, it looks really smooth, buttery, creamy. Everything just looks beautiful. That's why this lens is such a good lens for portrait photography, because it renders a very sharp subject that is in focus, and the area that is out of focus is thrown into creamy, beautiful, buttery, smooth bokeh. bokeh. I've mentioned several times before why I prefer to use longer focal lengths for portrait photography, especially this Olympus 50mm lens, which gives an equivalent of 100mm in terms of full frame 35mm format reach. Longer focal lengths can create more flattering looking portraits. When it comes to human proportions, in terms of the head size in comparison to the body, the limbs, nothing looks stretched or exaggerated or too long or elongated. Everything just looks proportionate, it looks realistic and more natural. And longer lenses can also create the perspective compression, the background compression, meaning that you have less background to deal with. It helps with composition, especially when you're out on the streets in outdoor locations where it's hard to control what goes in the background or where you are pointed the lens at. So when you have less to deal with in the background, it's so much easier to frame a cleaner shots. No lens is perfect, and this Olympus 50f2 lens being such an old lens from the DSLR era, there are some flaws that need to be mentioned. Number one, severe purple fringing. The chromatic aberration can be a problem. In high contrast areas, purple fringing can be very obvious, and it's the kind that is so severe that it's not easily corrected in post. And of course, this lens being a macro lens, it's not designed to be used in certain situations where there's plenty of backlit or stray lights. So if you don't have a lens hood, I have lost my lens hood, I don't know where it is. So using this lens naked, it is quite prone to flare and ghosting problems. But other than that, I think this lens is excellent if you can put aside the chromatic aberration issues, and if you don't shoot against strong sources of light, this lens can still produce super sharp results, really excellent rendering, even is on par or even surpassing the lenses, some of the newer lenses that you can get from today. Do I recommend this old DSLR lens, the Olympus 50f2 macro lens, for you to do some portrait photography? It is not an easy answer for me to give. If you have this lens already, or if you're one lying around not doing anything, why not? I think this lens is still perfectly usable. The autofocus is good enough. You can get some excellent results from this lens if you're using on the newer camera bodies like this OM1 and OM1 Mark II. Or if you can find one in the used market at such a low price, say $100 US, why not? It is a steal. The lens still can perform really well. However, outside of these two conditions, if you want to choose between this and other newer, more modern Micro Four Thirds native lenses, I would say go for the Micro Four Thirds native lenses. For example, the excellent Olympus 45 f1.8. It is so much smaller, it is lighter, the autofocus is way better compared to this older 50f2. We are talking about blazing fast, we're talking about higher keeper rate. Everything is just so much better in that lens. I know that it's not a macro lens, but we are talking about portrait photography here. The 45 1.8 blows this older 50f2 out of the water. In terms of image quality, there shouldn't be much difference. This older 50f2 may be slightly sharper, but the difference is negligible. You won't be able to see it even if you pixel peep to 200%. It is not a huge difference. And I still think that the newer Olympus 45 f1.8, it renders beautiful bokeh. I think the bokeh is even better than the bokeh from this 50f2. Just look at my background now. This bokeh, what you're looking me through, this is shot on the Olympus 45 f1.8. So overall, I still think that pick the newer lens, that would be a better solution. Smaller, lighter, faster, and even better bokeh if you ask me. That's all I have to share about using this older DSLR lens, the 50f2 Olympus, on the newer OM1 camera body for portrait photography. If you found my sharing beneficial, if you've enjoyed looking at my photographs, please consider buying me a cup of coffee, or you can contribute directly to my PayPal or join as a member on this channel. All the links are in the description below on how you can do that. Any support goes a long way. It will definitely help me to continue sharing as much as I can and make new content here on this channel. Until the next one, please go out and take more photographs. Bye-bye.